And a goat with a happy gut is a happy goat. Well, hey everybody, welcome back to Cattywampus Acres. It's Jason, and today we are talking all about what you should be feeding your goats and what you really shouldn't be feeding your goats, or maybe not feeding it all the time. Well, oftentimes we get asked a question when someone starts raising goats on what they should be feeding their goats. And I do want to preface this by saying I am not a veterinarian. I'm not a veterinarian assistant. I'm just a guy who's been raising goats for quite a while, knows what works, knows what doesn't work for our herd. And I'm here to help you try and figure out what you should be feeding your goats and just sort of help you along the process. So I think the best way to start is to talk about pasture. Pasture, when we refer to pasture, it could be a dry paddock, it could be a paddock of grass, it could be a section of the woods. And so when we talk about pasture, when I talk about pasture, that's really what I'm talking about. Sheep and goats are different. Cows and goats are different. Horses and goats are different. And the main thing that's different about them in a food sense is that goats are browsers. Goats like to eat with their heads up. They prefer to eat leaves and foliage and things like that over just nibbling at the grass. Now, will they eat grass? Most definitely. And that is one of the things we are going to be talking about today. In our pasture specifically, we keep a dry paddock. And we do that for a reason. It's something that our vets like us to do. And we don't keep any grass in here, so the goats really don't eat off the ground very much. And that's for a purpose. We don't get a lot of parasites in our goats, and we believe that's due to having dry paddocks. If someone lets their goats eat off the ground quite a bit, you will notice a higher chance of getting parasites. Areas like this behind me are a good example of what goats would love to go through, and they will eat all day on oak leaves and things like that. They love fresh green leaves. One thing I know that you should avoid is azaleas. We have a lot of them down here in Georgia. Our goats have never bothered our azaleas, so I think they know that it's not good for them. But yeah, I've heard from vets and things like that that azaleas can be toxic. But for the most part, if you just leave goats out in an area like this, they're going to be focusing on the things that are really good for them to eat. So when it comes to eating grass, like I said, I would not recommend it. They will eat it. Sheep prefer to eat grass, and they will actually trim the grass, which is actually pretty cool. And if you're looking at a grass mower, sheep are actually going to be the direction you want to go. And you want to clear brush, specifically things like kudzu, poison ivy, poison oak, poison sumac, briars, anything like that. These goats will eat it up. I'm telling you, they love that kind of stuff. So what about hay, like right behind me here? Well, grass hay is what should be the primary source of food for your goats. And I'm talking 50 to 75% of your goat's diet should be grass hay. And I'm talking a good quality grass hay. Here, we typically are using coastal Bermuda, and that's what our goats like a lot. We've also used rye. Rye is very good, and I will say rye is higher in sugar content and will actually keep them fed and happy for quite a bit longer. I just wanted to show you this real quick. One branch, one little tiny twig with leaves on it fell, and they all rushed to get it. That's what I'm talking about. Just convenient timing. Legume hay is another example of a hay that you can feed your goats. The thing to remember is about legume hay, specifically like alfalfa, you're talking protein percentages upwards of about 16%, which is very good for goats, but that's not what they need to be eating all day long. Also, we like to avoid alfalfa here, not only because of its expense, but due to the fact that we found when we feed alfalfa, we do not like the taste of the milk that comes from our dairy goats. If you're not drinking the milk, then whatever you're feeding them, really the taste of it's not going to matter that much. But when you're dealing with typical grass hays like Bermuda and rye, your protein percentage is going to be somewhere around 6 to 7%. And a really important thing to remember about eating hay, primarily with goats, is that it's the roughage. They need that roughage to make their rumen, which is their gut bacteria and their gut, that chewing of cud and all that stuff. They need that roughage in order to make their systems right. And a goat with a happy gut is a happy goat. Well, what about this stuff right here? Pellets, grain, goat feed, if you will. Is this okay to feed your goats? Two answers there. Yes, it is. Should this be their primary food? Absolutely not. And I will tell you why. So an all stock or a goat feed or anything like that is going to be anywhere from 12 to 16% protein. And although that is good for your goats to keep their protein up, specifically if they are breeding or in milk, that can be very dangerous if you constantly feed that to your goats. They can get things such as bloat, and specifically with the males and wethers, which are the castrated males, they can get something called urinary calculi. And a lot of vets and a lot of experts attribute urinary calculi, which is a very painful thing that can kill your goat, to too high of goat feed or grain. So you've probably seen people feed their goats grain before. Some people do it in the morning and night. Some people do a whole bunch. Our wethers hardly ever get grain. Our boys get grain only when they are breeding girls. And then when our does are in milk, they usually get grain probably twice a day, and that's just to keep their weight up. And it's your responsibility as the farmer or goat herder, or whatever you want to say, to keep up with the health of your goats. You should be testing their fecal samples with a vet or a lab. You should be checking right around the back tailbone there to make sure that they have weight on them. You should just be looking at the overall health of your goat to decide what they need and what they don't need. If they are getting fat, that is not a good thing. A fat goat is not good. And goats very much can overeat and will overeat. And when a goat overeats, it will give them something called bloat. And there are a few different kinds of bloat. We're not going to cover that in this video, but it's basically one side of their abdomen, usually the left, gets distended, and it also can kill your goat. Goat mineral, specifically goat mineral with copper, is very important for your goats. If you get a goat and sheep mineral, it is not going to have copper in it because copper can be toxic to sheep. But your goats are going to need copper, and a way to tell when they need copper is if you look at their back legs and they're turning like a copperish, brownish color, they're around the back of their thighs, that's a good sign that they might need copper. Another sign is their tails. Their tails sort of look goofy anyways, but if they get like a split tail or a fish tail where the hair is sort of going like this, that's a good sign that they need copper. And a good way to give them copper is with a copper bolus. And we will talk about that in another video. We're just talking about feed today. So breaking it all down, the primary thing you're going to need to give your goats is this stuff right here, grass hay. Keep this with them all the time. Also make sure they have water all day, every day. These goats will drink gallons and gallons and gallons of water, specifically if they're in milk or if it's really hot. So make sure you keep them watered and make sure you keep some good quality hay, just like this stuff here. Smells good. And I did want to cover something when it comes to hay. I've had this come up before with some friends of ours, and they had a goat with scours or diarrhea. And what we found is they were actually feeding their goats straw. The difference between straw and hay is straw has no nutritional value at all, where hay is 6 to 7% protein. That's going to be what they need. Straw will not provide anything. It will provide roughage only, and your goats, if they're eating just straw, will get sick and will die. So what it comes down to is you have to decide what is best for you to feed your goats and what stage they are in of their life. If they are healthy, if they need more food, if they need less food, if they are breeding, if they have been bred, if they are in milk, all these things factor in to what you feed your goat. But do not fall into the trap of just giving them some store-bought goat feed and thinking that is all they need, because a goat's rumen is crucially important to the overall health of that goat. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put a link to a video right here, and this video is talking all about Nigerian dwarfs and why you should get Nigerian dwarf goats. So after you finish this video, make sure you check out this video right here. Thank you guys for joining us. Homestead, home fed. We'll see you next time.